Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Glory Hunter career mode here on the channel. We are starting off today's episode by looking at our fixtures as we close out January and heading into the month of February, where you can see we have the Europa League preliminary round against Union Berlin. Both ties will be in the next episode. And we start off today's episode, obviously, we finished off the previous episode with a cup game away at Espanyol, and as soon as that game ended, we saw the draw for the next round, and we actually had another cup game straight away against Eibar of the Segunda division, and this was a bit weird because it literally came like 3 or 4 days after the previous round, which I'm sure is not how the Copa del Rey works in real life. I looked at the fixtures. Obviously there has been some games recently, and I looked at the fixtures and they don't play again for another few weeks, so I don't know why in this career mode we've literally just played a cup game and then literally 3 or 4 days later we've got another cup game. It's a little bit weird, and I didn't understand why that happened. Obviously normally with the cups they're kind of spread out throughout the year. Obviously a lot of them will have like earlier rounds, like preliminary rounds, like the FA Cup, and then the bigger teams go into them a little bit later on. But for some reason we literally played like a few days after the first cup game of the season, so that was really odd. But you will see that João Felix, the man of the moment, he's been on fire over the last couple of months, gives us the lead again. It was a really nicely worked goal. Lamar down the right hand side, actually completing a bit of skill that came off and led to a goal. Rolls it into Felix, who on his weaker left foot slams it home past the keeper to give us the 1-0 lead. But obviously with all the cup football in the career mode and it being the start of most of the cups in real life, obviously as far as I'm aware the French Cup has started and there's been a couple of upsets. Obviously we were talking about this in the previous episode. There was also obviously a couple of upsets in the Copa del Rey in real life as well, I think. And obviously being from England and watching the FA Cup, there's been huge upsets already in the FA Cup this season, and I've literally just finished watching. Unfortunately I had to watch Chelsea get absolutely humbled by City at the Etihad, but I was kind of half expecting it anyway. But at the same time, literally just a few minutes ago as I'm sat down recording, Stevenage have just won at Villa Park after being a goal down with about 5 minutes to go. They scored a penalty late on. Aston Villa had a man sent off, and then they scored a winner as well in literally the last minute. Can't wait to see the highlights for that. Bet the Stevenage fans were absolutely loving it in the away end at Villa Park. But it just all goes to show like the magic of the cup, like we spoke about in the previous episode. You just never know what's going to happen. And obviously this year, even more so with the fourth round draw. Obviously, Man City, who are now confirmed as through, will play Arsenal if Arsenal beat Oxford tomorrow night, I think that is, which you'd expect them to. But obviously that would mean arguably the best, well, not even arguably, the best two teams in England this year would be facing each other in just the second round of the domestic cup. Obviously Liverpool have got a tough replay away at Molineux after drawing the other night at Anfield, and to be honest they were quite lucky to escape with a draw. They should have lost that game. The Wolves goal that was ruled out right at the end was definitely not offside. There's been loads of replays showing that it wasn't offside. So kind of the big teams that you'd expect generally to do well in the cup, we've already lost Chelsea, who obviously have a really good record in the FA Cup. We're going to lose one of either Man City or Arsenal in the next round. So, you know, possibly the likes of United and Liverpool will be absolutely licking their lips. But some of the other sides in the Cup, especially like in the lower divisions, in the Championship and divisions below, may even think that they can get a run to Wembley if they get a bit lucky. But going back to the gameplay, you can see that we did manage to beat Ibar. It was quite a close game, but we were pretty comfortable. Saying that, they did have a penalty at 1-0, which was saved by Jan Oblak. I accidentally left the captain in for the game. Was meant to bring Dominik Livakovic in, but accidentally left Oblak in the starting 11. And well, I'm glad I did, because at 1-0 they got a penalty. It was Sergio Reguilon, who, I'll be honest, I've not been massively impressed with this season. There's been a lot of times where attacks have come down that side and like balls in behind him, we've been caught out. And that's exactly what happened for the Ibar penalty, but it was eventually saved by Jan Oblak, and we did go on to win the game 2-0 in the end. And it was pretty comfortable. But following that, you saw the draw for, I believe it was the quarterfinals of the Copa del Rey, where we drew another Segunda Division side, Las Palmas. And like I mentioned at the start of the episode, for some reason the game's in like 3 days again. So we've got 3 cup games in the space of a week, and that will be, I believe, the next game that you see in just a moment's time. But before that, I did want to delve into the transfer market. Obviously, we lost a few players who had gone back to their parent club on loan. Not really anyone that had played, but I did just want to bolster the squad out slightly before we got to the end of the season. I didn't want us to burn out, and obviously we've been playing really well, but I wanted to make sure that we continued our form. And I wanted to bring someone in who could play out wide. And, well, Adama Traore, I absolutely love him. I know that his stats and everything aren't fantastic, but, I mean, he's just such a unique player, such a dynamic player. He's impossible to stop. And, I mean, I just love him. I've got a lot of prop for him. A couple of my mates do as well. And, yeah, I thought we'd bring him in, obviously. Is at Wolves, but had a loan spell at Barcelona. I think it was last January he actually moved to Barcelona on loan and spent the rest of the season there. But we brought him back to Spain to play for us. Obviously, won't get a huge amount of game time starting, but he's a great option to have off the bench. Obviously, absolutely rapid. Arguably one of the hardest players to stop when he does get going. He's not just quick, but he's so strong, and like I say, just impossible to stop when he gets going. So we brought him in for, I think, around £17.5 million it was, just to add a bit of depth, kind of similar to the Toby Alderweireld signing, just so that if we do get any injuries that we are sort of covered, and we're not going to have to play like real fringe players. But like I say, following that signing, nothing else really happened on deadline. We did see that Molina, who had a release clause in his contract, which I didn't actually know, that was activated by Napoli. But we sat him down, offered him a new contract, and said, "Molina, mate, you don't want to go anywhere. You're having a great season here. We're on to possibly, I'm going to whisper it, possibly win a treble." Obviously, still a long way to go and a lot of big, important games to go. But like I say, getting back onto the field, we were back in Copa del Rey action for the 3rd game in a row. And this must just be a bug in the game, because I'm sure that's not the way that it works in real life. I might be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that the Copa del Rey final as well is always played at the end of the season. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because... or the case on the game anyway, because it just seems that all the games are being played back to back, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen with that, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But it was our 3rd cup game in a row, and we played quite a strong team. Obviously the Copa del Rey is really important to us, as we do want to try and win it in this first season. I'm hoping if we can win the league and the Copa del Rey, we can move within or after the first season, tick one of the countries off, and we won't have to come back to Spain to win any of the trophies. And that would kind of bank us 2 extra seasons, like I spoke about in a previous episode. We have kind of 3 seasons at each country, and if we can win everything in one, then it kind of means that we can move on. And possibly if we move, we can go to a slightly smaller team in one country and try and sort of rebuild, instead of just going to the biggest team in each nation. Like I discussed recently, we don't just want to go to the likes of Bayern Munich and PSG, and especially in France, I think a rebuild would be brilliant there because they've got loads of young players in France. A couple of teams that are obviously pretty competitive, but a long way off PSG, so that could be like a 3 or 4 season project. We don't just have to go there with PSG and know that we're probably going to win the league and the cup and possibly a European trophy as well, but that'll all depend on what happens this season. Obviously, still a long way to go. We've not secured the league yet. We definitely haven't secured the Copa del Rey yet. And actually, in this game, we were really struggling against the Segunda Division side, Las Palmas. Jonathan Vieira, who's a player who's been around for quite a while, still playing for Las Palmas, and he was their captain in this game, gave them the lead in the first half. And you can see just before the goal, they'd had a few more chances. Livakovic was called into action in the second half, and it was by no means an easy game. We had a pretty strong side out, and it was just before the hour mark that we would get back into it. Some great work by Yannick Carrasco down the left-hand side, gets into the penalty area and rolls it back to that man again, Joao Felix. How good has he been over the last couple of months? But after that goal went in, I was like, right, let's just make sure we don't lose it. That was the most important thing, because they were still worrying us going the other way. But I was like, if we can nick a winner, it saves us going to extra time. Obviously, in Spain, there is no replays, which is an interesting topic. I was speaking to a friend about this the other day, about sort of cup replays and whether they're actually a good thing. And we were saying for lower sides, it's a fantastic thing. Like if you get drawn against a big side and you go there and you get a draw, you get a result, and you get the replay back at your home ground, it's fantastic. Or even the other way around, if you're at home in the first game and you get a draw out of it, and then you get a trip to, say, an Old Trafford or any of the Premier League stadiums, you know, you see it a lot where kind of the more mid-table sides rotate their teams in the cup, and you could be travelling to a Premier League side. But this game was completely end-to-end. You can see here we were well over the allotted stoppage time, and as Joao Felix went through, I was thinking surely he was going to win it, but it was an absolutely fantastic stop by the Las Palmas keeper, and we ended up playing over double the allotted time before the referee finally blew his whistle. And you can see how difficult a game this was, as obviously Las Palmas held us to the 1-1 scoreline right up until the 115th minute, where they were coming forward again. But Alvaro, the man who we signed in January, who's been brilliant in the games that he has played so far, wins the ball back, sends us down the right-hand side with Griezmann, who just about keeps it in, rolls it inside to Morata, who'd come off the bench, and just those fresh legs, the defender gets pulled away by, I think it was possibly Felix or somebody else, kind of made a run off the ball, pulled the defender away, and it just sort of opened up for Morata, and it was a fantastic finish on his left foot. But you can see how devastated the Las Palmas players were. But as Morata comes inside here, smacks it in on his left foot, and you can just see a few of the Las Palmas players fall to the floor. They knew it was over, knew that they wouldn't have time, and I'll be honest, I was absolutely shitting it at this point. I didn't want a penalty shootout. I don't feel that confident taking or trying to save penalties on this year's game, and I was like, if it goes to a shootout, it is just really a 50-50. Obviously, on paper, we've probably got better players and spot kick takers, and our keeper's obviously going to be better as well. But it is a lottery, it's a 50-50, you never know what's going to happen. So when that goal went in from Morata, you can see a few doppelgangers in the Las Palmas end. I think they've been creating clones or something, they all looked exactly the same. But it was a really tough game, obviously took us pretty much all the way in extra time. And we just about scraped through to take us into the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, where you should see the draw in just a moment's time. But right at the start of the game, you would have seen that Koke went down with an injury, and it was unfortunately, as here is the Copa del Rey semi-final leg, it was a bad one for Koke. As he went down, I thought, oh, that's not a good one, and it will be a 7-month spell on the sidelines for the club captain. Obviously doesn't play a huge amount, but with so many games he was getting minutes, and to see him go down and we won't see him again until the end of the season. It was a shame. It was unfortunate. Luckily, we do have a lot of squad depth, but yeah, not really what I was looking for coming into that sort of period where when we're competing for 3 major trophies, we need our squad depth and we need players to be fit. But really unfortunate to see. But we got a bit lucky in the Copa del Rey semi-final draw. Number one, we avoided Real Madrid, who are obviously, other than ourselves, obviously probably favourites for the whole tournament. And we managed to avoid them. Obviously, the Copa del Rey is a 2-legged semi-final, similarly to the Carabao Cup in England. We managed to avoid them, and they actually also faced Sevilla, so not a particularly easy game for them either, as they will have to play them over 2 legs. So I was quite happy with the draw. You can see we had a couple of bids as well after the January window. Obviously, we're now into February, so I was like, there's 2 players who will leave at the end of the season. If we're not here, then it doesn't really matter, and if we are here, I wasn't going to use them anyway, so happy to move them on. I think one of them was a Spanish midfielder who went to Sevilla, and the other was a left midfielder who went to Newcastle, spending all that Saudi money on a pretty shit left midfielder from us. But we did then have a sim game back in the league, so we had a little bit of a gap, but I did decide to sim it as I wanted to get this first leg of the semi-final into this episode. It's a bit of a Copa del Rey special, this one. So we simmed the game against Osasuna, got a relatively comfortable 2-0 victory, which I was happy to see. But going into this game against Real Betis, obviously huge game, but I was thinking at over 2 legs, I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to progress through. But just 10 minutes into the game, well, we talk a lot about trying to keep the career mode realistic, and unfortunately the AI transfer market doesn't help. Not sure what Mikel Antonio is doing in Betis, but anyway, gave them a lead with actually a really nice goal. Pau Torres was in the starting lineup, obviously had a spell on the sidelines, and he's only just really coming back in. But he really struggled there against Antonio, sort of turned him inside out and bends a shot on his left foot into the back of the net to give Betis a 1-0 lead. And again in the cup, I was a little bit worried that we might be in trouble. Obviously a lot longer to try and turn this around than in the Las Palmas game when we went 1-0 down, as it is over 2 legs. But yeah, I was still feeling a little bit worried, but not too long after their goal, we did come forward on the attack, and it was actually Toby Alderweireld who ended up having the shot. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, came in the previous episode in January, and he's been fantastic so far in the games he's played. Because obviously Pau Torres was out for a little while, we decided to kind of throw him into the deep end, and he's been fantastic in every game that he's played. Really enjoying actually using him. I think it's quite a cool transfer, not necessarily the most realistic, but he has obviously played for the club before, and one thing I do really enjoy doing with transfers is bringing players back to a team, or sort of a country, or even like a city that they've played in before. So it was kind of cool to see. But speaking of players that we'd brought in, Adama Traore here bagged his first goal for the club. Really, really great play by Marcos Llorente to slip him through. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the greatest finish in the world. I think Claudio Bravo might want that one back, but he does manage to slide it past the Chilean keeper. Gets us back into the game at 1-1, and it was an important goal, that, because Betis were playing well, and you can see straight from kickoff coming forward again. And they've got a lot of good technicians in this team. They were keeping the ball really well, and it was Mikel Antonio who was really causing me issues. This time he's up against Toby Alderweireld, who we were just mentioning has been fantastic, but he does skip away from him, hits a shot on his left foot towards that far post, and, well, I don't think Livakovic was getting there. If it nestled in the bottom corner, he wasn't getting there. Luckily for us, it just whistled wide of the post. And at half-time in Spain, it was 2 players who have played the majority of of their careers in England who had scored the 2 goals. Mikel Antonio obviously giving Betis the lead and Adama Traore equalising for us. But I sat the boys down at half-time and said, look, we can be better than this. Let's go out there. Let's really push. And from the kick-off, it was those two again who linked up for the first goal. Marcus Llorente playing the ball into Adama Traore. And, well, this is why we bought him. He's absolutely rapid. He's a threat. He's not really known for his goals, but in this one, he'd secured his brace, and I'll be honest, we got very, very lucky. But down that right-hand side, you can see there, the defender tries to come across and just gets absolutely nowhere near him. Got so much threat and pace down that right-hand side. The first shot was initially saved by Claudio Bravo, but as the ball falls back to him, rolls it into the open net and gives us the lead for the first time in the game. And I'll be honest, it was quite a slow affair after that. Both teams kind of were keeping the ball well, but not really creating a lot. There weren't any clear-cut chances until the 88th minute when Betis got a free kick here. Toby Alderweireld brought down Antonio, who'd been causing me issues all game. I'm not actually sure it was a foul. He got a lot of the man, but did manage to nick the ball, I thought, first before the man. And as Fekir stepped over it, oh, it was so close to finding its way into that top corner. Cannons off the crossbar once again. Livakovic not getting there, and as we broke forward, well, this would have been an absolutely fantastic goal. Great build up by Correa and Cunha, 2 little back heels. This one from Cunha was fantastic, but the touch just took it into the defender's path. But we did manage to hold out for the 2-1 victory, obviously the away leg of the 2-legged affair here. And it was good to see that we picked up the victory to take back to the Metropolitano. And Adama Traore was absolutely fantastic in this game. It wasn't his debut. I think he actually started against Las Palmas, or at least came off the bench. No, I think he started, but he was thrown into this one again. And he was absolutely brilliant, a threat all day long down that right hand side. But like I said before the game, we'd had a few transfer offers. You can see there Diego Brie completed his move to Newcastle, which won't go through until the summer. But as I said earlier, not too fussed if he goes, whether we're here or not. But like I said earlier, has been a bit of a bumper Copa del Rey special, this one, but we did have 2 league games, like I say, obviously the Osasuna game that we simmed earlier, and then Valencia, who normally would be a big game, but they're actually sitting in the bottom 3 at the moment, so decided to sim this one as well, just so that we could continue our form in the league. And you can see at the moment we've actually got a 7-point gap over Barcelona, so we're in a really, really good position. We do have to play them, I believe it's actually in March, and we still have Real Madrid to play as well, which will be in the next episode, sandwiched between the 2 Europa League preliminary round games against Union Berlin. But as I say, that will all be in the next episode, which I hope you guys are excited for, and I hope you are enjoying the series. But that will do it for this one, guys. I hope to catch you soon, and peace.